Assalamualaikum and good morning to each and everyone, especially to you, ma'am. In the subject, Teaching English in the Elementary Grades, Language Arts. My name is Banbang L. Talulison from BEd 3304, and today I will discuss the Instructional Planning Cycle. Objectives. In these lessons, we will be able to identify the Instructional Planning Cycle, explain how the planning cycles plays the planning for instruction, and explore implementation techniques at each stage of the cycle. Introduction. In the previous lessons, you learned about the instructional planning and its components. As you may have guessed, planning for classroom instruction need to consider several factors for it to become more effective. It has to be well thought of and crafted. But how do we then go about this planning process? What should the teachers be thinking about in the planning process? So we learned in the previous lessons that instructional planning is one of the most crucial skills teachers have there in their arsenal in their teaching journey. So in this lesson, we should be looking into the instructional planning cycle and how the planning process could help guide teachers in developing their lessons. The instructional planning cycle. Planning for instruction, as mentioned in the previous chapter, is one of the fundamental skills of a teacher. Therefore, it is important for the teacher to make sure that his or her plans for the instruction are well thought of. So, a simple way to perform instructional planning cycle is by stating the intended instructional outcomes. Effective teachers begin the instructional planning cycle by identifying the content standards that the lesson or unit will address. At this stage, the teacher has a clear idea of what the students need to know, understand, and be able to do or meet these standards. The figure below shows the instructional planning cycle, and it begins with learning objectives, assessment strategies, instructional activities, and reflection. The process is adapted from the Understanding by Design framework by the Wiegin Mac and Mac 10 2005. Employing the backward design framework, the process enumerates the steps necessary in the planning of classroom instruction. So as you can see, this is the backward design. Number 1, identify desired results. So this is what the teacher wants the students to understand and know and able to do. The number 2 is determine acceptable evidence. This is how do the teacher check if they have learned. The number 3 is plan learning experiences and instructions. So which learning activities will lead students to the desired results. So this is the instructional planning cycles. Number 1, learning objectives. At this stage, the teacher is compelled to ask, what should I teach my learners? This can be the skills, knowledge, or values found in the curriculum document. So, learning objectives, it is a way for teacher to construct, sequence, and plan out learning goals for a specific instructional period. It is also describe what students will be expected to learn by the end of the lesson or discussion. The number 2 is assessment strategies. After the teacher decides on the objectives, he or she now needs to identify how can the learners demonstrate their understanding and or achievement of the learning objectives. So assessment strategies are methods of a teacher used to evaluate their students' progress and plan the content in their course. Using assessment strategies, we will able to know if the students have their understanding about our discussion or topic. The number 3 is instructional activities. At this stage, the teacher now begins to think about how to teach his or her learners. Here, the teachers will now plan for the teaching strategies and learning activities that will be used in the classroom. So, instructional activities are small routine segments of instruction that specify how the teacher and students will participate and how they will interact with materials and content. So, instructional activities is important because it has limit the range of the interactions, materials, and content that the voice must manage rather than the full range that classroom teaching demands. Number 4 is reflection. After the implementation of the instructional plan, the teacher then reflects about his or her teaching. At this stage, the teacher reviews what has happened at the implementation of the plan. So, reflection, it is a systematic reviewing process for all teachers which allow them to make links from one experience to the next. Make sure your students make maximum progress. It is also a basic part of teaching and learning. It aims to make you more aware of your own professional knowledge and action by challenging assumptions of everyday practice and critically evaluating practitioners' own responses to the practice situation.
Good afternoon to each and everyone, especially to you, ma'am. So, by the way, I am Nahata Jikundo, BA3 Block 3 of 4. So, Lesson 7, the topic for today is instructional planning models for teaching English. So, objectives. In this lesson, you will be able to identify various instructional planning models used in teaching English. The second is compare instructional planning model identified and adapt a model in designing one's own instructional plan. So, the ADDIE mode is one of the popular models because of its simplicity and practicality. So, the example of instructional models is behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and connectivism. So, we have here 5 ADDIE model. So, first is analyze, the second is evaluate, the third is implement, and fourth, develop, and the last is design. So first is analyze. The instructional designer clarifies the problem to be addressed with an instructional intervention, defines the training needs, and conducts an intensive audience analysis to determine the instructional environment, pre-existence knowledge, skills, and abilities, opportunities, and constraints. So the second is design. The instructional designer writes learning objectives and determines the instructional strategies that will be utilized to achieve those objectives. Decisions are made about how the instructional materials will look, feel, operate, and be delivered to the learner. Storyboards and e-learning prototypes are created. So the third is develop. Content is assembled or incorporated into the design to produce the instructional or performance support materials. Deliver is reviewed for quality and revise. So the fourth is implement. The finished course of performance support tool in roll out the intended audience and its impact is monitored. So in the last is evaluate. The instructional designer used various methods to determine whether the course of performance support tool is delivering the expected result. So an instructional design model is a tool, a framework to develop instructional materials. It helps instructional designer provide a structure and meaning to the learning materials. It allows them visualize the training need and break down the process of designing training material into steps. So, ito yung mga example ng paggagawa ng framework to develop instructional materials. So, this is the example. So, that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Jumaila K. Ramat, BA304. And for today's lesson, we are discussing the camp design model. Camp design model, also known as the Morrison, Rose, and Camp model, follows a circular structure and its elements should be taken as an independent elements. One advantage of model is that teachers and instructional designers are given the flexibility to begin the design process from any rather of the elements rather than work in a linear fashion as would other models. 9 elements. According to Kurt, there are 9 elements or steps in a camp instructional design method. So the first is instructional problems. Determine the specific goals and identify the instructional issues that could arise. So ang tinutukoy dito is ina-identify yung problem goal. So the second one is learner characteristics. Identify the traits and characteristics of learners that should be taken into consideration in the planning process. So it is talk about the learners characteristic. Kumbaga, yung characteristic ng isang mag-aaral or ang pag-uugali. The third one is task analysis. Make course content clear and analyze the proposed task components in relation to the goal purpose of the course. So, ang task analysis is what should be included. Instructional objectives, learning outcomes. Define the instructional objectives and the desired. So, it is measurable and specific learning objectives. Fifth, content sequencing. Ensure the instructional content are structured sequentially and logically. So, it is the order of the content. Instructional strategies. Design the instructional strategies in such a way that learners would be able to learn the content and attain the learning outcomes. So, in these instructional strategies, it is the best way to present the lesson. So, let's proceed to the designing the message. Plan the instructional message and the appropriate mode of delivery. So, in designing message, it is the design of the material. Instructional delivery, develop the necessary instruments in order effectively achieve the instructional goals and objectives, taking into consideration the materials available to the teacher. So it is about compiling the resources. And the last one is evaluation instrument. Design and development of appropriate formative and summative assessment to determine whether the instructional goals and objectives were attained. So, it is about, in this evaluation, it is about assessing the learners. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Good day everyone, especially to you ma'am. I am Kalimpo Sarah Jane, grade 3304, and I will discuss the ARCS model. The ARCS model is developed by Keller in 1980s. The model unique feature is that it focuses more than on the motivation of the learners, ensuring that they are kept engaged during instructions, rather than focusing on steps to take in the development of the instructional plan. The model provides components, and there are 4 components. The number 1 is attention. This is refers to the interest of the learners. This is critical part of the model as it is initial hook of the learner's attention. And the second is relevance. This is component refers to the usefulness of the learning content so that the learners could create a connection between it and the real world. And the third is confidence. This component develops the expectation of success and progress among the learners and at the same time gives the learners opportunity to control their learning processes. This is important as the learners will have a rough estimation of their probabilities of success in the conduct of the instruction. The last one is satisfaction, as there is a direct correlation between motivation and satisfaction. The learners should have a sense of success and fulfillment after achieving the learning goals and objectives during the learning process. That could be all. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So this is my part, which is discussing the designing instructional plan and the encouraging presentation. So first is the designing instructional plan. At this stage, thematic instructional planning usually involves making adjustment in these elements, especially making appropriate choices of learning strategies, activities, experiences, and learning materials related to the theme. Okay, sa puntong nito, which is the designing instructional plan, is kumbaga nai-involve daw yung sinasabi nating adjustment from the word designing. For instance, what genres of writing could my learners write in using the theme as the starting point? Kumbaga, pag art yung topic mo, which is mag-i-integrate ka ng mga maaring sa art, which is kahit sa pagsusulat lang, gagamit ka ng art doon, which is mga color red, isusulat mo, tapos anong color pa, basta magdi-design ka doon para maging mas epektibo yung instructional plan o yung kumbaga itinuturo mo. So the second is the encouraging presentation. Encouraging presentation, as the thematic approach is geared towards holistic and context-oriented. It is much more meaningful to the learners if they could be given the opportunity to present their work. Okay, from the word encouraging presentation, di ba? Sa encouraging presentation, to make it clear, focus muna tayo sa topic, which is the encouraging presentation. It is much more meaningful, di ba, to the learners if they could be given the opportunity to present their works. So, di ba, sa pagpipresent mo pa lang ng topic mo, diba, sa mga visual aids, is gagandahan mo na yung visual aids mo para maging kainganyo siya. Kumbaga, mas attractive, may encourage mo yung mga students mo na makinig sa kung ano man yung itinuturo mo. So, that's all.
This is the part of thematic approach to instructional planning, choosing a them. So it is focused on how the student and the teachers decide to their specific topic, kung ano ba ang babagay sa lesson na kanilang napili. At ito ay mas magiging better kung ma-relate ang topic sa interes ng bata para mas madali or maingganyo sila sa topic na kanilang napili. The second one is integrating a them with the existing curriculum. In this part, kailangan alam ng teacher ang integration of topic at kinakailangan na alamin muna ang objective para ma-integrate ang main lesson sa information na igagather mo.